It's disturbing yet beautiful, and there's always a deeply rooted meaning behind everything portrayed in the 20 minutes. Starting with the use of the pomegranate fruit, which could be the opposite of Adam and Eve's apple. They are frozen, bloody, and raw, and a main element to the film as we always see the main male lead using them. He plants the seeds, and now there's a plant in the bed, and then there's men that have pomegranate heads. The absence of sounds at points is eerie, but it really draws us into the characters' emotions and perspectives, especially when their only form of communication is through mind reading. There's a statue that's not quite art and not quite human. And even the main female lead acts a little bit weird. All of it leads to a bigger picture, and that's to a queer man not being able to come out or accepting his sexuality. This is a disturbingly beautiful piece.
Had some very unforgettable images that contributed a lot to tension. Specifically, I'm thinking about that scene where our protagonist is struggling with that pomegranate on his head, which I think is a symbol for something else. And I think it does a really good job of, like I said, creating tension through images. I think that tension with music or with action and stillness works well. And another example of tension, I think, is even just in certain frames, you're just looking at overall these like sort of dichotomies that are existing. For example, like I just felt so anxious watching him drink pomegranate juice with like a pure white shirt. That was very nerve-wracking for me. Similarly, when we see the overflowing water, or even when we're learning about the senses that the statue can feel, and we see that gulp, symbolizing that or expressing that taste, I think that also contributed to a lot of the tension that this film does really well through very, very small details.
Rawness and the intimacy that I thought worked well to sort of counterbalance the greater theme of the central character's sexuality. I thought that the motive with the human structure was quite interesting. I felt like the piece had a real strange energy that I thought really contributed in sort of reflecting the internal conflict of the lead character. I thought a lot of the images reflected a sort of a closeness that didn't necessarily produce an intimacy. So I thought there was a lot of ideas about emotional hollowness and a difficulty in sort of finding your identity. And I thought the piece used an interesting sort of motive with a very sinister backdrop. It felt like a horror film at times. The use of the fruit seemed sort of like an inherently biblical or a sort of a symbolic exercise in terms of the sense of finding, in terms of trying to find yourself. And I thought the piece had a good way of matching it with images and music that sort of helped the overall theme work when you get to the end.
This was a really artistic film. It felt very abstract. It was really fun to watch. I loved all the motifs in this film of earth and living things and growing and planting and pomegranates, and how we saw all these pomegranates sort of squeezed as if they were, human organs or flesh, or it really resembled a heart and, blood, which I thought was really interesting how they shot those scenes. I loved the way that this was shot. We had a lot of different ways that we held the camera. We had the shaky cam as if from the first character's perspective, going through the scene. I loved of course, the human sculpture. So that was a really cool aspect, and how our main character had a relationship with him, in a way. So I liked how that was shown on screen. It's supposed to be a fiberglass statue when in fact, it looks very human to us.
A very mysterious and unique original concept for this film. A lot of symbolic use, I think, with the pomegranate, the resurrection, the Christian art reference, of the historical idea of everlasting life. The fiberglass statue was so well done. The makeup, it really did look like a statue at the beginning. So to become knowing that this is actually a person in makeup, wow, fantastic job. The young man seems so hesitant when he first gets to the art gallery, and we feel maybe he must know that he's going to see the sculpture, the figure. He doesn't absorb what the girlfriend is saying to him when he first enters. That was interesting. And the very little dialogue and the use of this great actor's expression. He was just right for this part.
A very surreal experience. A lot of the imagery, especially when our protagonist started getting very intimate with his sculpture, it was all it had a very strong experimental vibe. It was very surreal, and had an otherworldly kind of element to it.
Truly unique. It's sensual and elegant with some elements of dreams, hallucinations. They have very interesting special effects, and the whole concept of a sensible statue was very, very unique for me and original. I think the utilization of the pomegranate was also interesting. It adds some color there and a lot of dramatism. So it was very sensuous and deep when they are talking about their relationship.